So today we're going to look at writing equations of secant and cosecant graphs like we do with sine and cosine. And to do this, you need to open the PDF file that is posted for you on Canvas. It says secant and cosecant extra practice. And you want to go to the, not the answer key one, but the worksheet one. You want to go to the third page where it has three graphs, and it says equations 6 times, and we're going to write a secant and a cosecant equation for those graphs. So let's get to it. Okay, so here's our first picture, and the one thing missing in the directions, and you guys to write down for me, is that the x scale is by pi over 2. So that means that this is a pi over 2, and then a pi, and then a 3 pi over 2, and so on. So to write a secant or cosecant equation, your best bet actually is to draw in the sine or cosine wave. So I'm going to just put this middle dotted line in here to help me, because I'm not the world's best drawer by any means. And when you graph these, you drew sine or cosine and then flipped them. So we're going to do the same idea. I'm going to flip them back. So there's my, I'm just taking my peaks and valleys and flipping them back over. So there's my sine or cosine wave. So we're actually going to write a secant and a cosecant equation. So we're going to do our dab like we always have, DAB. And for the D, it's this middle line that I drew in right here, which we're going to do is -1. Amplitude is how high or low you go from that middle, which for us is a 2. And then to find my period, I'm going to give another color. So for my period, I'm going to go from peak to peak. So I can go from here to here, which is a pi. We can see that labeled right there. So we're going to do 2 pi over b equals pi, or pi over 1. And you can cross multiply. You get 2 pi equals pi b, which means b has to equal 2. And then we have to pick our equation. So I'm going to pick to write my, we'll do sine first. We'll do cosine first. I'm going to call it cosine with quotes because it's really not cosine. It's really going to be a secant because cosine and secant are reciprocals. But the reason I picked cosine first is because on my y-axis I have a minimum. So that means my c value is non-existent. But because it's a minimum and not a max, I need to make the a value negative. So if I write this equation as a cosine, it'd be y equals -2 cosine 2x or theta -1, but it wasn't a cosine. So I'm going to take my eraser, I'm going to erase it. It wasn't a cosine. We're trying to write secant and cosecant, but we're using sine and cosine to help us. So in here, I'm going to write, since I did cosine, then this would be a secant, because secant is cosine's reciprocal. So we can use the same exact procedure, and we're going to write a sine. So I'm going to do air quotes, a sine. If I do a sine, I'm going to have to c value. And I'm going to use this one right here because then I'm going up like I want to. And if this right here is a pi over 2, then this one right here, this dot that I'm drawing again, must be a pi over 4 to the right. So my equation would have been y equals, my amplitude goes back to being positive again, 2 sine 2 theta minus pi over 4 minus 1. I'm going to grab my eraser. It's not a sine. We're trying to write its reciprocal, so we're really going to write a cosecant. So this is just like writing sine and cosine, only we have to take a step and replace the sine or cosine with the secant or cosecant. So let's try another one. Let's try number 4. So now I've got number 4, and just like we did before, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna draw my sine or cosine. Here's my middle, which I'll use in a second, but I use that middle line because then I can just do this. I can flip this one, and I can flip this one, flip this one, and that makes it really easy for me to draw because I am not a great drawer. So there is my drawn in graph. So let's do our dab. The D right here is that middle line that I drew in, which is -1 again. My amplitude is how high or low I go from the middle. So again, it's gonna be a 2. My B value is from similar to similar, so I'm gonna go from there to there. So I need this distance to help me find my B value. I told you in the last video, or the last problem, sorry, these were by pi over 2, so that's a negative pi over 2. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, or pi, 3 pi over 2. So this net distance from dot to dot is going to be a 2 pi. So 2 pi divided by something equals 2 pi, or 2 pi over 1. Well, your B is going to be 1 this time because you don't need to change it. Didn't change its period at all. Then we have to do our trig. So for this one, let's see. On my y-axis, I have a middle. So that means that I'm going to write a sine first. And I'm going to have no C value. I check your amplitude. I don't need to reflect it because from this middle dot, then I go up like I'm supposed to. So I'm good. So it would be, if I were writing sine, it would be y equals, my amplitude is 2, sine. If you want to put the 1 in here, you can. You don't need the 1 though, and then your theta, and then a -1. But remember, you didn't have a sine. You had a cosecant, because cosecant is sine's friend. Similarly, if I try to write a, air quotes, a cosine equation, this time my C value is going to equal, let's see, let's take this one, because then it's a max. This one is pi over 2 to the right, so pi over 2. So it'd be y equals 2 cosine. You can put the 1 if you want. Theta minus pi over 2 and -1. But again, you don't have a cosine. You're really trying to write the reciprocal function. So cosine's friend is secant. So hopefully this video helps you. We have learned this skill of writing sine and cosine. So just one more step to draw the equation in. I'm going to leave number 5 undone for you so that you can try it and then check it with the answer key that is posted.